Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of All That Remains. I am your host, Sully, for this episode, and today I'm joined by Count Fracula, and how are you today?
I'm alive with a mauled finger.
Yes, if you want to see pictures of that, come and check out the Discord, because he chopped his finger off, or at least a significant portion of his fingertip. So that's always fun.
Yeah, it is a bit grim.
Count, it hasn't stopped you from playing Pokemon, which we're going to talk about real soon.
Yes.
And in the second half of this episode, we're also going to be covering, I guess we're just going to call it the showdown between Project Xcloud and Google Stadia. And I guess, again, I know we've recapped this a little bit over the last, probably since we've been doing this podcast, really, because a lot of the streaming stuff's been real hot at the moment. But we are, again, going to touch base with streaming and that future, but more specifically this time, Google Stadia and Project Xcloud, because they're pretty much here. But before we get into that, as per usual, Count, let's touch base on what we've been playing. I won't bore you with the details. I've been playing a lot of Minecraft. I think we all know what that's about. But Count, what have you been playing?
I mean, it's probably a bit obvious what I've been playing mostly.
Pokemon.
That being Pokemon.
Which one did you get?
I'm going to try and think of something else that I've been playing just to balance that out first. Unfortunately, I've not been playing a huge amount because of my finger. It's been a little bit restrictive. But I tell you, I've been playing The Legend of Bumbo.
Never heard of it.
It is. So it's made by the creator of The Binding of Isaac, Edward McMillan, and it is a prequel to The Binding of Isaac, but it's a bit different. So the art style is made to look like everything is made out of cardboard, and it does it spectacularly. It looks wonderful. It's like every little room is like a diorama made of cardboard. It's wonderful.
I think I actually have seen this game before.
The way it plays out is it's like a turn-based thing where you have a certain number of energy points or movement points for the turn, and you use those movement points on a match for tile board. So you can move a row or column and however many spaces you want, and that uses a movement point. And matching up various types of things have various effects. So like if you match up a bone, that means you can throw it at somebody. If you match up some drops of pee, you get extra energy points, and you get more if you match 5 or 6. And then if you match things, you also get some mana in that thing. So you get some bone mana, and you can use some of your one of your spells if it needs it on the enemies. It's surprisingly fun little turn-based thing. I'd have played it a lot more if Pokemon hadn't have come out this week. But yeah, it's a really fun little game that I would definitely recommend. It's a sort of deck-building roguelike. It's fun.
I like it. I actually am a liar, though. I actually have been playing Link's Awakening, so it's not all Minecraft. Which Mark and I went in depth a little bit last week on Link's Awakening as well. But still enjoying it. So, quick update, still enjoying it. I think I'm about halfway through. Yeah, it's really cute. I like it.
I've gotten most of the way through. I'm up to the mountainy bits now, like properly into them. I stopped playing it for whatever reason. I think something else came along that I wanted to play, and now Pokemon's out, so that's just taking precedent over everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll come back to it and finish it. So it's a really lovely little game. I do like that. That thing.
Nice. I dig it. Count, which version of the new Pokemon did you get?
Both.
Oh, hardcore.
I got the double pack because I'm that guy. And it came with a gold steel case to hold both of them in, and it's lovely.
Okay. Now, before we jump,
the one I've been playing first is Sword. Okay. So
Sword.
If you want to answer it like that.
Okay. All right. So before we I'll cut you loose on Pokemon, and then we touch base on your opinion so far and your thoughts on the the controversial points of the latest installment. Before we jump into that, can you tell me the difference between the two versions of this game? Because I was thinking on the way home today about how there's always been two versions of each iteration of Generation, and then they have like I guess you'd call it the refined deluxe version that they always do.
Yeah.
Um,
They've not done them recently. They sort of
Yes.
stopped doing them for some reason, which is a bit of a shame. But
What's interesting, I mean, again, I'm not super duper experienced with the Pokemon series. I played the earlier ones. I still couldn't tell you how much value there is in purchasing both and how big the differences are. But to the best of your knowledge, can you give us a rundown of what Sword and Shield are like in terms of the differences?
so the standard difference is obviously there's different Pokemon available, certain version exclusive Pokemon available in each game. So look up so if that's what matters to you, look up a list of the differences and see which ones you prefer more. So for instance, I know that Tyranitar is in Shield and it's called Komoomo from Sun and Moon. It was the pseudo legendary dragon from that, is in Sword. I know that, so that's one particular difference. Another difference is the legendary Pokemon, obviously the cover legendary. So there's always a little factor of that in your mind. You go, oh, which one of the cover legendaries do I prefer? And that's just been going on since Gold and Silver. So that's nothing new at all. But there is something new in this one, difference-wise, and that is that certain towns have different gym leaders, varying on the game. So in Sword, for instance, the 4th gym is a fighting gym, whereas the 4th gym in Shield is a ghost-type gym, and the 6th gym in Sword is rock-type, and the 6th gym in Shield is an ice-type gym. So that's possibly the newest the most difference that's been around in a while. Like that's something they've never done before, is change gym leaders varying on the version. But by and large, the games, like, they change. There's subtle differences, but it's never like huge differences. It's one of those. It's basically arbitrary.
Yeah. So, like, as a fan of the series overall, what are your thoughts on just there being 2 editions or copies each generation? Is it an annoying double dip attempt, or in your mind, is it worthwhile?
I think there's part of it that's an annoying double dip attempt. There's also a part of it that it's now a sort of tradition in this franchise, and I feel like it's one of those things that a certain subset of fans would probably cry out in horror if they stopped doing it. But I kind of personally feel like that it doesn't have to be done anymore. I'd rather just have one version with everything in it.
Yeah, but Game Freak being Game Freak these days, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't.
Pretty much. Yeah, that seems to be the theme of the last few months. Is like everything they've done, be it a change, be it something staying the same, they just can't win from certain people. I really do feel sorry for them.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, yes. I can't comment too much because I haven't really played it, but I think a lot of the kind of hashtagging attacks definitely unwarranted. Definitely a little bit childish.
Well, the most childish bit is when people decided to send death threats to the guy who runs Cerebi, which is a completely independent, nothing to do with Game Freak or Nintendo, site for Pokemon news and like a general database of stuff, a very useful resource. And he was receiving death threats because he refused to report on things that weren't substantiated.
Ridiculous.
Fucking bullshit.
Ridiculous.
Don't do that.
No, very childish. Do you want to give us your nutshell kind of thoughts on the game so far before we start kind of talking about any criticisms you might have?
let's do that. So I have, I've beaten the third gym. I'm just into the area where you're getting around the second set of gyms. I'm really enjoying it so far. I don't think I've enjoyed a Pokemon, like a mainline Pokemon game, as much in quite a while. I don't count Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee as mainline games, but I did enjoy them, definitely, because they were different. But the 3DS games in particular, I am very lukewarm at best towards. I didn't dislike Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but they weren't great. And I also, I've made it known before that Gen 6 is my least favourite. So the last ones that I got properly excited for before these ones were Gen 5, which is Black and White. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I will say a lot of so Jim Sterling did a Gymquisition yesterday about Dexit, which is what all this stuff is called, and he said in his he did like a mild sort of his take on the game as a whole, and he said that it doesn't innovate much and it feels like a game that's a bit archaic, stuck in the past. I don't entirely agree with that criticism, but I do see where he's coming from. There are a lot of elements of the game that could have done with a bit of a zhuzh up.
Spit and polish.
Yeah, a bit of spit and polish, a bit of bringing into the modern day.
Yeah, I was speaking to somebody at work about this today, and they're not playing it, they've watched their partner play a lot of it, but he just can't get it out of his head that he's played like older JRPGs on the Switch that look better.
See, I do like the look of it. I don't think... there's the odd bit where graphically it doesn't look amazing. But overall, the game does look quite nice. I don't personally have any problem with the graphics. I think they've put the detail where it matters. That's just my opinion. Of course, everyone's free to disagree.
Absolutely.
But I would say overall, I am having a really fun time with these games. I'm having a really fun time discovering all the new Pokemon that I've never seen before. And
in a new environment, I guess you'd say, for Pokemon
in this
as well.
new environment we've never been to before, and possibly I think it's the biggest environment that we've ever had to look around, and it is wonderful to play as someone who's been playing for a very long time. But there was another thing that Jim Sterling suggested as an improvement that would have, silenced quite a lot of people's criticism. So, instead of cutting out half the Pokedex randomly, just cut out all of it and have all new Pokemon. And just say, no, you're not getting any of the old ones back. I kind of think that would have helped. They nearly did it in Black and White, Generation 5, where they had, until the post-game, until you'd beaten the Elite Four, none of the things you could catch were available, were from the old Pokedex. It was all new stuff until the post-game. So I feel like that would have allayed a lot fewer people would have been angry if they'd done that.
Yeah. Well, it would have been a case of all fresh then, and I don't think you can complain about all fresh and new.
No, exactly, because you've just got this big roster that you've never seen before to go and discover.
And they could have been quite open about the old Pokemon in previous generations as well. We built this entirely new engine and game for the Switch. A console we've got very limited development experience on. And it's an ambitious. I would imagine it was a fairly ambitious project, creating this Pokemon Sword and Shield for the Switch, considering, they'd only been dedicated handheld developers before. They could have just been open and saying it's too hard, we can't do everything.
Yeah, I do feel like their responses to a lot of the criticisms could have been better. They could have done a more nuanced job at allaying some people's concerns and criticisms. because they never properly addressed why they cut half the Pokédex and how they chose. Like, they said, oh, it's for balancing issues, which I get, but go more in depth into your explanation, and, you might bring some more people around as to why you've decided to do this.
And if some Pokemon have balancing issues, wouldn't you just rebalance the Pokemon?
I think that's the problem they were having, is trying to rebalance 800 odd Pokemon.
Right.
Isn't exactly a fun task.
I get it. You've created like a rock, paper, scissors game with 800 pieces or like players,
Yeah, it's one of those that it is such a bloated series, particularly with the amount of Pokemon and the amount of moves at this point, and you have to, like, at some point it's had to happen where there was some cuts, but the way they've done it isn't amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to happen with a series that's been running since the 90s as well. Like, I mean,
yes,
come on.
It's 20 years old, this series. It's
exactly.
ridiculous.
I think credit to them that they've been able to maintain it fairly well up until this point. And, we've spoken about this before, like, those Pokemon may return someday in future iterations or updates. But at the moment, this is what it is,
One idea that someone came up with, and that I quite like, is make something like Pokemon Stadium that has all of them in, but doesn't have like this big, because one of the, presumably reasons that they have done this is because they wanted to focus more on the world and make this big RPG, which will take up considerably more space than just, programming in a few Pokemon. So what they could do is make something like Pokemon Stadium, so there's no real plot in it, it's just the battling, and use that for the competitive with all of the Pokemon in it. I kind of like that as an idea. I think that would work. And then they can have their mainline games. They don't have to have all the Pokemon in them, because you can just have this separate thing for the competitive scene that has everything in it, but doesn't have a plot, and they can focus on the plot and the actual, RPG stuff of the games in this side lot.
Yeah, I can see that working, and even potentially some kind of like interactivity between the two different games as well. Like,
oh, definitely, because you could have the interactivity using Pokemon Home, which is their new app thing that they're bringing out at some point. I don't quite know how it's going to work yet, but I know it's coming out fairly soon. So it'll be done through that. It's
it's interesting how they have approached it though. Like, because again, I think I would side with you and Jim, and probably just be okay with just new and a decent explanation as to maybe why the old is missing and potentially if it will return in the future. I mean, look at Smash Brothers. Like, that was an undertaking and a half to get every single character back into Smash. And I imagine it's going to be a similar undertaking to get the entire catalogue at this point, close to 1,000 Pokemon, correct? Into a future iteration. It's insanity. So I don't blame them. Can't do everything. So, I mean, in that sense, I'm definitely siding with Game Freak. But Count, any other criticisms you have or the community have that you want to touch on?
Right. I'm going to touch on one that's I find a little bit annoying that they keep mentioning. And it's the animations of Pokemon with the moves. Right. The one that really gets me is when they've shown repeatedly a Pokemon using the move Double Kick, which is a multi-hit move. It hits twice, funnily enough. And this is the standard for multi-hit moves for the last couple of generations, all the 3D generations, has been, instead of doing a full animation, it does like a little hop, and then there's like the weird battle animation on the other side where it's like a kick graphic appears or something. Now, for me, that is fine because it only happens on multi-hit moves, and let me tell you the reason why. Well, in what I think is the reason why. And it's because of flow. Because if you're making the Pokemon performing the move do an animation each time a multi-hit move hits. For instance, if you've got something like Fury Attack, that can hit up to 5 times. If you've got a Pokemon doing the animation for 5 times in a row, that's going to add several seconds onto the amount of time it takes to perform that move. And that might not sound like a lot, but over time that is going to stack up and that is going to get annoying. So the reason they've done that with multi-hit moves is so that everything flows a bit quicker, flows a bit nicer, and the multi-hit move takes about the same length of time to occur as a normal single hit move with an animation. That is what I think is the reason for that. It's never been confirmed, but that's what I think the reason is for their choice for doing that. But people have looked at this and gone, oh, look at the animation. They've not done animations for that. And it's like, no, they've never done animations for multi-hit moves. Stop being willfully annoying and ignorant about this. Look at the animations they're doing for other moves that aren't multi-hit. And there was somebody got an early copy, and they were doing like a stream or something, or recorded a video. And this has also been a thing in Pokemon for a while, where you can turn off the attack animations if you don't want them to happen, or if you just want the battle to flow even quicker. I believe they had done that. Either that, or they had hacked the game, because they had like 90 odd Master Balls. And I think one of the anti-piracy measures is that it'll disable certain features like attack animations because you've pirated the game. It's one of those little, let's make the game slightly worse because you've pirated it kind of thing. And it wasn't showing any attack animations on the previous thing. They're like, oh, look at the attack animations, and just stop. At this point, I feel like the fan base that are just crying about it constantly are almost embarrassing themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it's probably a very small minority as well.
It's a small but very vocal minority, definitely.
Which is the case with a lot of things. I think you're on the money. Like, it sounds like that could be the issue with the multi-attack animations. But again, Game Freak doesn't do themselves any favors. Like, just come out and clarify something.
Yeah, they ought to come out and clarify something. Although I will point out, when you're in a Dynamax battle, which is the new thing where they turn huge, a multi-hit attack will animate for every attack. And I don't really know why they've made that choice. The only reason I can think of is because when you're in that type of battle, everything moves a bit slower anyway, so their thinking may have been, well, it's not going to make much difference at this point. Because when a Dynamax Pokemon in particular, the huge ones attack, their attacks take quite a long time. Like, not an annoyingly long amount of time, but, long enough that it's noticeable. So, yeah, that's my little, really? Okay, that's a bit of a strange choice kind of thing about that.
But, again, you're going to get some, strange choices and things people disagree with when you're really changing up, I guess, the formula and the world and, everything about Pokemon for this iteration, at least aesthetically and visually, and I'm assuming the battle system, a lot of it's fresh, different, and new.
They've cut out, for the battle system, they've cut out a lot of old moves that are either redundant or just not particularly useful anymore. And they've put in a few new ones, obviously.
Do you think a lot of the kind of, I guess, nitpicking or shortcomings with this game, or just people disagreeing with decisions, is because, it's Game Freak's new attempt on the Switch, and they're finding their feet with kind of what they're going to build upon for future iterations?
Yeah. What I feel like this is the backlash is a combination of people being determined to not like the games after seeing one thing that they didn't like, presumably the Pokédex, And also, I feel like it's a combination. It's also, Game Freak trying to find their feet with this. Because, yeah, like you say, it's their first full Pokemon game on the Switch. And I'm being very careful with the way I'm phrasing that, because it's not their first Pokemon game on the Switch. It's the Let's Go games were first. It's the first mainline Pokemon game. And they've also had another game come out on Switch recently. It's an RPG that looks moderately interesting. I might give it a try, but that's beside the point. And a lot of the time, a lot of the criticisms, I'm like, just give them time. I'm sure most of the criticisms that people are having can probably be resolved in either a patch or in the next set of games. Because, if I look back at the first set of 3DS games, X and Y, my main issue with them was, well, A, the plot was shit, but that's by the by. But my main issue with it was the performance. Like, it performed like dog shit. It had a lot of frame drops. It wasn't very consistent. And they managed to fix that in the next set of games, and that was great. Just... It's some teething problems, I think, more than anything. That's what it is.
I think that's certainly fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, at least... Yes, go on.
No, go on.
No, I was just going to wrap it up, so now's your chance to toss it in.
I got one more little thing that people moan about. And this is Game Freak's own fault. I will definitely hand them that. It's their fault because they stated that they're making models from scratch. But some leaks suggested that they are not making all of the models again from scratch for the Pokemon. Now, if that's true, you shouldn't have claimed that you were making them all from scratch. If you did make them all from scratch, great. However, I'm still going to maintain that even if they didn't remake all of their models from scratch, if you don't think that they had to at least tweak every single model for every Pokemon in that game, I think you're wrong. I think they've had to have at least tweaked every model in that game, and I think that will have taken at least a day each, and if they'd have had to do all 800 odd, then that would have been a good, 3 years nearly. So
long ass time.
Yeah. Even if they just had to minimally touch it, I'd say they'd have to have at least a day with each one. And if they had to do them all, we wouldn't have been getting the game until about 2021. So,
Yeah, and I'm sure this is part of the reason why we didn't get all the Pokemon as well. Just the labour that goes into it.
Almost guarantee that is one of the reasons. And, Game Freak has 1,000 employees, which is quite a lot, but by game studio standards, like big game studio standards, isn't a huge amount. And they don't have an endless, infinite money pool for budget. They have, a set amount of money they can spend on this game. I feel like in the next set of games, Nintendo, because they're the publishers, should give them a bigger budget so they can just go ham and just give them this huge budget to make an amazing Pokemon game, to be able to afford enough time or man hours to make all of the Pokemon again properly and put them all in. I feel like they could do that with a bigger budget for it. That's what I think at the end of the day all of this comes down to. Because it usually does in the world, money. Yeah,
and this iteration has been received well, and I think by the fan base as well.
Yeah, critically, it's been received well. It's been review bombed by fans on Metacritic, but that's not surprising. But there was news this morning that it's one of the best-selling Pokemon games in a while. It's sold very well so far. So, obviously quite a lot of the people that were going, oh, I'm not going to buy it, I hate it, I'm never going to touch it, have actually gone out and bought it. And that's not surprising. They were going to buy it. They're just bloviating.
I think it's a no-brainer that they will double down for the next iteration. Like, acknowledging that this first Sword and Shield iteration on the Switch has been pretty successful, and they served up something that was received pretty well. So I think them doubling down and improving it next time around is a no-brainer and going to happen eventually. Obviously, that's going to be years off the next iteration, as they usually are, but...
Oh, it definitely is. But I do feel like they're going to at least learn something from this generation.
Absolutely.
All the controversy around this, and be able to apply it to the next.
Yeah, and you know what, Cal, when everything is said and done, all these nitpicks that people have won't actually detract from the enjoyment of the game. You're not going to be sitting there going,
what?
oh...
I'm playing the game, and I'm having a really great time.
Exactly. Nobody's sitting there like knocking like enjoyment points off their time because this Pokemon is missing. Nobody's fucking doing that.
I'm sure some people are.
Oh, get the fuck out.
Don't get me wrong. I am disappointed about it that it happened. But I understand. And I'm not so petty as to get really, really angry about it.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing to remember though. You know, if you're enjoying it, you're enjoying it. Nitpicks aside, you know, that can be addressed in the future, you know?
Yeah.
The game fucking works. You know, I know there's been a few little performance hiccups here and there.
It's not a bad game. It's not like EA have released it. It's full of microtransactions and horribleness. It's a perfectly fine game. So just go and enjoy it. Have a bit of fun. At the end of the day, it's just a video game. And it's just a video game that's not trying to fleece you for every bit of money that you have in horrible, insidious ways. Chill the fuck out.
Just in case you needed it put into perspective.
Yeah.
It's an enjoyable Pokemon game. But, Count, I think we can put a cherry on this. Yeah.
Yes,
let's speak about other games and different platforms.
Exactly.
Moving along. So, to the promised Xbox Project Xcloud and Google Stadia. Now, Google Stadia is out. It's in the wild now.
Somehow.
Yes, somehow they flopped that thing out. So is actually Project Xcloud in beta. So I believe that's available in, I think, Korea, US, and the UK, which is disappointing because I'm really hanging out to try it. But like I said at the beginning of this recording, Count, we kind of want to just kind of cover, I guess, kind of pull apart Stadia a little bit and talk about, I think, the promising aspects of Project Xcloud. So let's just get Google Stadia out of the way. Let's just tuck in. So, performance issues, day one. You know, many people having issues with Google Stadia. It's had poor tests. Its pricing model's very average. You know, it's a subscription service where you also have to buy the games, and its lineup is actually kind of
boring.
I don't want to say boring or lackluster. But I'm going to say not
I'm
currently...
going to say boring and lackluster.
Okay, I'm going to say...
I don't like it.
Definitely not trending or relevant at the moment.
The only thing that could be remotely considered trending is Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's only because it's just come out on PC. Everything else is more than 6 months old. And in the terms of the cultural zeitgeist, that's old.
Not relevant, exactly. And that's what I mean. Like, there's some good stuff in here that if you haven't played it...
Oh, yeah, there's good games in here, definitely. But nothing, quote-unquote, current. Nothing that's like, oh, this is the big seller.
Yeah, so I'll quickly fire them off for people that are only listening. I will have this up on screen. But we have Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Destiny 2, something called Guilt.
Guilt is their exclusive, their single exclusive game, and it's a puzzle game.
Just Dance 2020, Mortal Kombat 11, Red Dead Redemption 2, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Samurai Showdown. That's a typo. It says show. Is that spelled right?
I don't think it's a typo. I think that's literally how they spell it.
Cool.
SHODOWN.
Anyway, Thumper, Tomb Raider, but now you'll also be out. Oh no, that's not a game, but.
But now you'll also be able to
That's
play.
Definitely
Imagine if that was a game.
What? Like, Google, tell me.
What do I play? And it just changes every minute. It just changes format.
I'm gonna have to make
That'd be amazing.
Yeah. Attack on Titan, Farming Simulator 2019. Huzzah!
Whoa, slow
Final
down.
Fantasy. I know. What the fuck? Final Fantasy, Football Manager 2020, Grid 2019, Metro Exodus, NBA 2K20, Rage 2, Trials Rising, and Wolfenstein Young Blood. So straight away count, I think off that list, I think you can throw away 3/4 of it.
Yeah, I could throw away, 2/3, 3/4 of that list, and I would not feel like I'd lost out on it.
So nothing really at the moment. There's no. I mean, let's talk. It's not really the same, but there's nothing system seller on here, right? There's nothing that jumps out to me like The Mandalorian for Disney Plus. There's nothing.
Exactly.
There's no hook.
There's nothing on here. There's no killer app. The only exclusive they have is a obscure puzzle game. Nothing on there makes me go, oh wow, I want to get that and play it.
There's a lot of games on here that were killer apps. 12 months to 6 months ago.
12 months ago. And they've since come out on other things where you actually own them.
But I mean, like, if you never got around to playing these killer apps originally, you're probably not going to invest money into a new technology that's having issues to play these games, right? If they didn't get you the first time, I would highly doubt it's going to hook you now. The lineup is disappointing. The only hope that I think Google has for fleshing out, I think arguably and potentially maybe a larger catalog than Microsoft, is that they do have a full retail price tag for the games that do go up into the service. So I imagine that would alleviate a lot of the concern with publishers wanting to put titles onto the service, because it's still a traditional pay model, right? So I think that could actually net them a lot of titles a lot more rapidly than something like Game Pass or Xcloud could, because that's just subscription.
Sorry,
so I think
I've had a cat just walk in here.
I did hear him. I was like, oh, hello.
She just sort of pawed the door open, just like, hello, young man. Let's be in.
Epic.
No, she's been
She can
fed.
stay. She just needs a bit of a love. Give her some love count.
Yeah.
Fuck. Where were we? Other than ragging on Stadia. So, look, I don't know what else to say. Like, it's kind of like beating the dead horse at this point. Like, everybody's covered Google Stadia. It's out in the wild. It's released. It's having issues. Honestly, I haven't heard anybody say it's worked flawlessly for them.
No, everyone's had some sort of issue with it.
Yeah.
Stop stepping on the keyboard.
This is to be expected though, right? Like, performance issues on a new streaming service, right? But again, if you weren't ready, you weren't ready. Like, they've known about these issues. It should not have launched.
The general consensus does seem to be that it's launched when it's half finished. They launched it for a deadline rather than for completion.
Like, if we had to kind of theorize, why do you think they picked now to launch?
Christmas. Literally
Christmas?
The only reason. It is prime Christmas shopping time right now. If I remember rightly, the weekend coming is one of the biggest retail weeks for Christmas shopping, because it's when everyone decides to do it. It's this weekend and next weekend, because next weekend is a lot of people's last payday before Christmas. That is exactly why. It's because they wanted to have this out so people who are going to get a bit of Christmas shopping are like, that's a cheap little games console I can get for little Jimmy or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, you can buy like a startup package with a controller and a, what's the thing that plugs into your TV? The dongle. Google Home, whatever the fuck it's called. But why not next Christmas?
I have so many issues with it.
I don't think anybody thinks it's a great service yet.
No. I think it just shot itself in the foot at every step it took.
So many people do this though as well.
Go, we've got this amazing streaming service come out. It's only going to be £130. Oh, great! So is it going to cost anything? Oh yeah, it's just going to be $8.99 a month to use. And okay. So what games do you get there? Oh, you don't get the games. You have to pay for the games separately. What as separately from the $8.99 a month? Yeah. You have to buy the games as well. Okay, so can I play the games offline? Well, no, because you don't actually own the games. You're just buying a license for the games, which technically is against the law in several countries. If you pay money for a game in quite a few countries, especially in the EU, you technically own that game, and no end user license agreements or whatever can trump that. And they're like, oh no, so you don't actually own the games. It's like, okay, so what? I've paid you 130 quid for your little box. I'm paying you 9 quid a month to access the box, and then I have to pay on top of that for the games. Like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, right, fuck it, I'm out. I do not want this at all.
Yeah, just really strange, isn't it? And again, like, I can only imagine that the model that they went with was to probably entice, I guess, publishers on board. I guess to appease them, make them feel a little bit safer with putting their product on there. But like, again, to sum it up, like, it's a lackluster lineup. So you have to subscribe, and then they're asking for more money to buy each individual title. So if it's not like something you can just jump in and kind of dabble around with like you can Game Pass or Project Xcloud.
Yeah.
It's a different beast altogether. Like, they're asking you to make 2 leaps, which is kind of...
They are double dipping you for money here.
Yeah, it's very bold, I'll say that.
That's one way of putting it.
Especially when you're launching with that lineup.
It's some EA levels of bold.
Oh, yeah,
that is.
Absolutely. But I mean, let's move on to Project Xcloud, shall we?
Yes, we've mentioned it. Let's move on to it. Just by the by, Game Pass is just... I'm loving Game Pass on PC at the moment.
Dude.
They've added in the last few weeks a fun little game called Tracks, which is you build like a model train. It's like, you know, the old wooden train sets you had as a kid. It's like you're building one of those. It's great. But they've also added Rage 2, and they've added Age of Empires 2, the remastered edition with 4K graphics. Like, oh, I love it. I love Game Pass on PC. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it?
But, oh yeah, it's a great deal. I love it.
Mm.
But let's talk about Xcloud, because...
Not to confuse the two.
Why don't you roll out the lineup for this, because...
Oh, I'm not even going to fucking read it. Jeez, Louise.
Yeah, it's a very long lineup. There's I'd say about 30 games on it at least.
I think
not slightly
I've
more.
heard 50. I haven't counted them. But okay. I've heard apparently the number's just gone up to 50 this week. Now, there's a couple of interesting points regarding this. So, Project Xcloud is a separate streaming service to Game Pass, but there is some Game Pass interaction and interconnectivity between the two. So, any game that you digitally own right now that you've purchased through the Microsoft Store on your Xbox or PC will be available to you to stream via Xcloud.
Okay.
And I believe... I don't know the exact specifics regarding the Game Pass interconnectivity, but they're planning to roll the two services together eventually, I believe.
So basically, you pay one subscription
that's
and you
already
get access
the case.
to...
So you pay for the Game Pass subscription and you get Project Xcloud. But, and this is the interesting point that it's not quite 100% clear as to when it's going to change, the only titles that you can stream are the ones you've digitally bought and the list that exists right now for Project Xcloud. So you don't get the entire Game Pass
you
library.
Don't get the entire...
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But if you have a Game Pass subscription, you have access to Xcloud. So 2 separate libraries at the moment. So kind of like the PC Game Pass and the Xbox Game Pass, but you can kind of roll it together with an Ultimate subscription and get the extra games on both different platforms. So it is a little bit confusing, but the value is still there, you know? It only increases the value. So now, some interesting points that I want to talk about regarding the Project Xcloud games list, which again is on screen. I think, to be honest, I think this list does lack a lot of big third-party titles.
Let's put in some context as well. We're not gonna run around and claim that this list is infinitely better than the list for Stadia, because it's got a lot of the same issues in the fact that it's very, like, a lot of the games are a bit old. You know, it's got a couple of newer ones on there. WWE 2K20 springs to mind, but that game is a steaming pile of shit from what I've heard. So, but yeah, like, there's just more choice on here. And from looking at it, a lot of the games on here are either Microsoft owned or they're made by Microsoft owned studios. So there's definitely not a huge amount of third-party stuff on here.
No, it's the typical Microsoft and Xbox story of lacking either third-party exclusives or first-party exclusives. Now, this time around, they've got the first-party exclusives on there, but we're lacking the third-party exclusives. In contrast to Google Stadia, one thing they did get right was, although they're not like relevant at the moment, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a fucking huge title, third-party title to have on your system.
It's a big title to have, and it's also a title that a lot of people, particularly with PCs, will struggle to run.
Yeah,
because it's
exactly
this big, huge game. Unless you've got a big, beefy gaming rig, you're going to struggle with it. So I think that's going to make a nice difference. But with I'm looking at the Xcloud lineup, and I'm struggling to find many games that will be like that make a huge difference. Like Gears 5's on there, that'll probably be a game that'll run better. If you've not got a very good rig, it'll run better on streaming. But there's so many factors that depends on. So this is the same with both services. There's so many factors that depend how well this will run comparatively.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, straight away, though, if you're an Xbox player and a fan of just, I guess, the first-party titles in general, this is a no-brainer for you. It's the easiest way to take Microsoft's exclusives with you on the go on any device that you want, right? But again, this is still the hard sell. Like, I'm sure Microsoft aren't interested in just appeasing just their existing fan base. They want to grow their base. And I don't think this list does it for them. And in fact, I'd argue that I think Google Stadia, I think although a lot smaller, I think it would probably entice a general audience. There are fewer games,
but there are a couple of games I'd argue are stronger sellers.
Absolutely.
On the Stadia list than there are on the Xcloud list. You go on the Xcloud list, there's a lot of good games on there, definitely. But there's none that are, system sellers or subscription sellers in this instance. But let's touch on what I just said, because system sellers, subscription sellers, that is the key thing to me. You don't need a box for Xcloud, do you? No. That is the key difference. Do you have to pay for the games? No. You're paying a flat subscription fee and you get to play the games. That's it. That, in a single sweep there, is what makes Project Xcloud infinitely more appealing and infinitely more interesting.
And one more
Stadia.
Point count as well, which I think is easy to overlook at when you're just looking at a lineup to get your subscription. I think this is the key thing to remember. You can add any game you want to Project Xcloud if you simply buy it. Now, again, I know you're paying a subscription and you have to buy a game digitally to add it to that service, but the point of Xcloud...
different to Stadia, isn't it?
No, but the whole point of Xcloud is that you can take it and play it anywhere.
Yeah. You can take your library wherever you want.
So if
your library. It's the stuff that you have personally bought, plus these other things.
Yeah. So it's whatever it is lacking in terms of in terms of its lineup, you can resolve by simply, buying it. If you want this service to play games wherever you may be, if that's your primary goal, buying games is probably not an issue for you, right? It would be nice to just have them on there, but it's probably not a huge issue for you because that's the reason why you're investing in this kind of service and tech.
Exactly.
So, I mean, Count, what do you think? How do you think this future is going to pan out between the two of them? Because at the moment, I think Google has a kind of a silver bullet up their sleeve with probably enticing titles onto their service because it is a traditional pricing model. But I think at the moment, Xcloud performance-wise is vastly outperforming Stadia, and its subscription model is more appealing. And I think you could argue the case that its lineup is, depending on the type of game you are, if you're an Xbox gamer, you're hands down about this list. It's got every single exclusive under the sun on it, plus, a pretty substantial list of other games as well. How do you see this kind of panning out between the two? Can they coexist, or will one flop?
I feel like at least one of them will flop. Depending on how it goes, maybe both of them.
Yeah, right.
But the way I see this going specifically, initially, publishers of games in particular will be attracted to Google Stadia because of the reason you said, that they get to have a proper cut of a game sale. But I think over time, fewer people will adopt Stadia than will adopt Xcloud. And that will eventually shift the market from publishers going, well, we could put it on there, we get a cut of the game, but there's not really anyone on there to buy them, so we might as well just put them on Xcloud. And I think that's where the market will shift. I think that people will go to Xcloud. I think out of the two services, the Xcloud is the stronger. And if only one of them flops, I think it's going to be Stadia.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's hard to envision a world where Google has something that does just completely flop, considering how much money they have behind them. I feel like they will persist with it for a long time, much like they did with YouTube in the early days and trying to make that profitable.
But what they might do, they might end up doing what they did with Google Plus and
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Just keep going despite the fact it's already dead.
Yeah. Which I think this is kind of the determination a pioneering service needs, right? It needs somebody that will stick it out until they know for sure. But I'm with you. I think the games industry will move into, definitely a subscription-based service. A streaming service, who knows if everybody's ready to adopt that just yet. But I think like music, like TV with Netflix and Spotify, people are willing to invest in subscriptions to access content. So I think that's a no-brainer. And I think
I feel the only issue that you might find arising from that is the same thing that's happening with television-based, like visual-based streaming services at the moment, where you'll end up with a fractured marketplace and it all just implodes in upon itself. Like I do genuinely think that's going to happen in the next couple of years, is that the video streaming market in particular is just going to die on its ass because so many companies going, oh, well, let's get in on this racket and open our own subscription service for our things. And then we're seeing in the same situation that we were with cable TV.
We're seeing that with like distribution services, not subscription services, but distribution services like Epic, Origin, all that shit right now as well. So, that would be interesting. That's probably a whole nother topic. But back to Project xCloud and Stadia, I think the important thing to remember with Project xCloud is that it's not exclusive to Xbox gamers. This is something that anybody can access if you have an internet connection and a device to play it on and a controller or a keyboard. It's not limited. So I think that's probably the only thing that I think Microsoft would have to worry about, is getting awareness out that, this is like Stadia. Anybody can play this. But if you asked me to back a horse, I 110% would back Project xCloud in this race, just based on its performance, its current lineup, a little bit lacking, but a lot of quantity there, and you can add additions to the service by purchasing them digitally. So I think absolutely Project xCloud at the moment takes the cake. And let's keep in mind as well, like, credit where credit's due. Like, it's in beta and it's outperforming a service that has launched. Which I think is a little bit crazy when you think about it. I think Microsoft's taking a very slow and steady approach to rolling this out. And I think it's a very wise move. And to be honest, it is kind of gobsmacking as well that the lineup is astronomically at least larger in quantity when it's still in beta too.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, rolling it out slowly like this gives them more time to iron out any issues that people may have. Whereas Stadia's just gone, hey, it's out now. Go and get it.
Give us your money.
And they're like, yeah, thanks. Good. Not going to be doing that.
there's a lot of promise with Stadia. There's a lot of promise. Like it can play in your browser. And Google's tapped into every computer. So there's a lot of potential ease of access and use there. But if you can't get the server end stuff right, then you're fucked. And that's, I think, currently where we're at. Like, I don't forget your lineup. If you can't deliver the game to me latency free, then you're fucked. So let's get the technical stuff down first. It shouldn't have to be the most ideal of ideal conditions before I get like a perfect or close to perfect experience. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out. And I will note that as of this point in time, Project Xcloud is, I believe don't quote me on this, but I believe it is free to access if you sign up for the beta program. So you could go test it if you're in the Korea, US, or the UK for free if you sign up and are accepted into the program. So, yes. Interesting stuff.
There we go.
I know you're not keen on that count. I know you're not ready for a streaming service, but yeah. I would very much
Give
like
it 5
to...
years, I might be ready for it when infrastructure catches up.
Yeah, that's fair. 100% fair. It is very situational, and it's not going to be for everyone right now. But me personally, I'm pretty keen to at least give it a go and see what it's all about. So, yeah. But let us know what you guys think down below in the comments. We'd be very, very interested to hear everybody's thoughts on Stadia, Project Xcloud, the streaming future. Let's talk about the lineup, what's missing, what you want. Let's just go guns blazing on all things streaming services down below in the comments. So very much want to hear what you guys think. And of course, you're welcome to join our Discord server. There'll be a link for that down below in the description as well. But Count, thanks for jumping on. We will be back. You're back. We're back next Thursday, aren't we? Or is it somebody else? Am I with Mark?
You made the time.
I don't know, man. We got a roster. We'll have to check the roster out. But we will be back.
Yes, it's me.
Fantastic. We'll be back Wednesday for the UK and the US and Thursday for Australia. Either premiering or streaming on that day, depending on our technical setup or situations. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. But until next week, guys, have a good one.